So yes, yeah, just let me introduce a little bit to the topic, like why cybersecurity is so important, and even like if you are in this whole building management topics and smart infrastructure and smart cities, because everything is coming there together and is connecting. I mean, currently, if we talk about smart infrastructure, we say that today we have about, let's say, 30 billion assets which are connected. And this number of assets will grow to 125 billion assets in the next 10 years. And the reason why is rather simple, because we are in the data-driven economy and we have all the sensors now out there and actuators which are getting connected to build this fancy, small, smart world. So either it's Industry 4.0, mobility, smart city, AI, or whatever. I mean, you need data to build this smart world. And that's the reason why connected devices are growing on that number. Well, as you said, I mean, we have a daily experience on reading that something is going wrong with cybersecurity. And in the moment I will talk to you, there are botnets out there which are operated on IoT networks, which contains about 1.6, 1.5 million devices and assets each. So it seems to me something is wrong with cybersecurity. And the problem is that we haven't changed our perspective. Like, our perspective for cybersecurity is still from a, let's say, less connected world. And this perspective is like this little nice zombie firewall we see here. I mean, look, top on the left corner, there is a system administrator standing on top of this firewall. He's just looking down to all the zombies who are arriving, but he's safe in his compartment and the zombies are out. Normally, you call this a zero trust model. And to be honest, the zero trust model is the hot shit of the cybersecurity industry currently. Everybody is telling you zero trust is the best. The idea of zero trust is that I have here a gate and I will keep all the zombies out and I will just let people in which I can really identify. And then if they are inside my compartment, I can define what kind of trust level access they get. Well, from a past cybersecurity perspective, this is the right model. But as I said, like, we are stepping in the smart world where everything is interconnected, where the number of devices is increasing. And to be honest, the model looks almost like this. There are too many devices stepping in, and we need to connect with some of the devices which are out in this, let's say, harmful zombie world. But there are too many devices. So what can we do? I mean, we can try to make higher firewalls. This will lead into costs. We don't have enough system administrator to watch on all these devices, to be honest, because there's not so much human resources out there in cybersecurity. So it seems to me that the model is not working rather well, even if we call it zero trust. And that's something industry hasn't recognized yet, to be honest. We are just trying to build the stuff with the models from the past. But regulation has identified or has really a close look on this. And to be honest, the regulators, they have foreseen that something is going wrong. So what we see now this year, that we get more cybersecurity restrictions into IoT devices. For example, the California cybersecurity bill. I mean, it says vendors needs to be reasonable actions to secure their devices. And now we have a big discussion about what is reasonable. Let's take Amazon Ring, which is one of the big IoT smart home providers. I mean, they had some horrible privacy and cybersecurity fails. And now the lawyers will discuss what are reasonable actions and if Amazon has taken these reasonable actions. And as I'm from Europe, we have the European Cybersecurity Act, which has come in force last year, but Europe needs a little bit more time, but it needs to be executed within 2023. And the Cybersecurity Act is a standardization process for cybersecurity. It's something like Europe is trying to define the curves of bananas in terms of cybersecurity, which is important because then all the European member states have a common understanding on what is cybersecurity, and they deploy cybersecurity schemes. And these schemes will or needed to be executed by vendors, and there will be as well coming new schemes into the regulation, for example, for artificial intelligence, because we see AI is deployed on IoT at the edge. And then this device is getting regulation for IoT and regulation for artificial intelligence. So if you are a vendor, you now need to take care a little bit more about cybersecurity in future. Otherwise, you're running into liability problems. What I'm doing next is I just want to get to you a little bit more of an idea why this topic is not so easy to discuss, even if we think about smart infrastructure. First of all, IoT products are often rather expensive. Like this is a smart light bulb. It costs $30. It's a smart light bulb which can be controlled by Wi-Fi. Well, you see, it's more expensive than a regular light bulb, and you're more vulnerable when you use it. So you pay more and you get, as a reward, less security for your privacy data. Why this light bulb is an interesting point, because we'll see this later on for many smart assets. Well, a light bulb is an asset which has been built into a building, and you need to remove it. You need to have the ability to remove it because you have to exchange it. But if this light bulb is controlled with Wi-Fi, it means that all the Wi-Fi credentials are placed on the Wi-Fi module, which is built in as well on this light bulb. Okay, so your smart home Wi-Fi credentials are on this light bulb, and you can remove it easily. Just get it. If you are visiting a smart building, well, just remove the light bulb and you have a hardware asset where the Wi-Fi credentials of these buildings are in the controller, and then go with them to home. And I mean, you don't need the light bulb anymore. You just want to have the internal electricity stuff of the light bulb, so you can destroy it to access to the internal stuff. And this is now real hardware hacking. So you see, there had been some stuff to be removed. And if you go further, you can use a Raspberry Pi setting, Arduino setting, connect to this internal life of this light bulb. And then you're getting full access on the electronic components and full access on the Wi-Fi module of this element. And you can read the credentials which are on this light bulb. And by that, as an attacker, I have the Wi-Fi credential of a building. Well, I had a real life story is digital signage systems in buildings as well. So we made that for a customer. You know, the signage systems when you have a conference room and there is a printed on then by the display what kind of conference, which people are attending. To do this, the signage module needs to be connected with the Exchange server. So it seems to be there are credentials for the Exchange server on the signage. What do you think? If you take a screwdriver and you remove the signage module in a company, how long it will take that someone from the cybersecurity CERT team will be informed that a, let's say, cybersecurity critical component had been removed from the company? A day, an hour, 3 days, a week, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks? Well, I would like to estimate, well, think about 4 to 8 weeks. So as an attacker, I have a lot of times to use the credentials then to hack into Exchange server, for example. So you see, cybersecurity seems to be complicated in that world. I did something for you. I made a Slido poll, and maybe you can join the Slido poll by scanning or entering slido.com. And give me a little bit feedback about your cybersecurity state, because most of us are currently in the home office. And I had a question to you on that Slido poll. Just have a look on it. 1 second. I need to change now to the Slido. And I hope you are contributing to the poll now. And let's see if some results are coming in. So let me change the screen. 1 second. Oh yes, the first results are stepping in. So my question to you was, when have you last updated your router? Well, and some say, well, it's a Google Wi-Fi. I don't need to care about updates. It's cool, but you trust Google, keep in mind. As some said last month, 3 days ago, 1 week, never. And to be honest, if you ask, this is a rather quite typical list of answers. So some have outsourced this burden of updating their routers. Then you need to trust your provider. I mean, but others say, well, it took longer. You know, I never, 2 years. I mean, if you have done it 2 years, not, then it's like a never. No, I don't trust Google. Well, that's also a good question. So you see, but if your router at home is not updated, it's vulnerable. To be honest, we have now seen a fancy new vulnerability set since the last 2 years, which is attacking routers last 2 days. And it's also attacking routers of smart infrastructure. So vendors like Siemens are involved and others. The who is who of the industrial operators are vulnerable because they used a vulnerable IP stack there. So, but if you are failing yourself at home, I mean, how do you do it as a company? It seems to be getting complicated. Thanks for joining the poll. And by that, I'm just moving back to the presentation. And we'll slightly go afterwards to the next poll, I hope so. Wait, I need to find out my presentation here. Just not I'm getting lost or something like that. So, but it's sometimes with. So we just change it immediately. So meanwhile, don't hesitate with the polls. Yeah, going back to my presentation. So thanks for joining this little poll. As you see now, okay, you have a router maybe and it's updated, it's good. If your router is not updated, it's maybe vulnerable or devices from outside can access to your router. And now we are coming to the next problem regarding cybersecurity, especially if you talk about smart assets, even like buildings. Learning from IoT fails, I believe most of us have a printer, and even in offices, there are a lot of printers. There's an estimation out there that about 50,000 of your printers currently are vulnerable to a very simple attack. And by this attack, I can access from outside your printer and I can force your printer to print silly stuff. So this was an attack performed, I think, 2 years ago, but the vulnerability is still there. And so the attacker used the printers to make an advertisement for a very famous YouTuber, namely PDP. And this is getting a meme under hackers to promote this YouTuber that he gets more subscribers. And so they used access to the printer to force the printers to print these advertisements. Well, and it was affecting all types of printers. So if you have a label printer or your home printer for the paper and stuff like that, someone can access your printer. Well, why it's so easy? I mean, the vulnerability is something like when printers had been designed in the past and had been built in the past, of course, printer protocols have been built as well. And this was all in the 70s, 80s, 90s. It was a world where the internet was not there. So some of these printer protocols are not secure, rather simple. And if you want to secure them, you can't secure them on the printer. You need to secure them on the router. And what they're using is an attack on the port 2900, TCP attack it's called. And this is the remote management port of printers, and all connected printers have this port because this is a remote support function. And by that, you can force the printer to, yes, print silly messages. And because the world is so easy now, as a hacker, even if you're a script kiddie, you can go to GitHub, just search on printer exploitation kit, PRET, and you get the completely Python libraries, and you can perform this attack by yourself because everything is ready now. And this is as well an aspect. If you think about ransomware, the same story. We had ransomware beginning that groups were performing ransomware. Now we have ransomware as a rent. You can rent the infrastructure to perform the ransomware attack, and then you have to pay 30% of the ransom as a revenue share to the provider of the ransomware infrastructure. So even cyber criminals are now getting more comfortable as service providers, including revenue share models. So this is the cybersecurity world we are currently. So by that, I want to give you another chance to contribute to a small poll. 1 second, I will just prepare it now. And I will start the next poll now. And turning back to my, we'll show you the next presentation. 1 second, it started. People are just joining the poll. I will switch the screen sharing to go to the next poll. 1 second, click, click, click. So we see now the next poll, and I ask you to go to haveibeenpawned.com. If you have a chance, please go to haveibeenpawned.com and type in there your email address. It's really not critical to do this. This is not a provider who is collecting your email address, but he will check if your email address has been used in data breaches. So if there have been a data breach where they have found your email address, and if there have been other credentials as well on this data breach. And now we have seen the results coming in. 3 people have tried it. I tried it as well. If I do it, my email address has been used on 2 data breaches. One data breach, there have been only found the email address. On the second one, there have been found as well passwords and stuff like that. So it seems to be, even if you are, let's say, more responsible and you take more care on your own security, I mean, you need to trust the service provider and think about on how many service platforms you're entering your email address, you're entering credit card credentials, you're entering your passwords. And we now have daily data breaches. And the amount of data which is getting lost, it's about 100 million, 200 million data sets and more. All these data sets these data sets are often going into black market, and then they are sold and collected on general databases, which can be used from the hackers anyway. And even if you have changed your password, sometimes you have password patterns. So the databases are helping the attackers to detect patterns of your password and then to attack you by using certain specific patterns, or to run rather good spear phishing attacks, just to optimize their own attack, to get the best results. If I know all your social media profiles, if you know your credentials, I can run this attack perfectly. So I will stop this poll now and return to my presentation. Phil, how much time we have?
You're pretty much at the end, but take another 5 minutes because you've got an audience. You know, there's
yes. Okay. So it's okay because
leaving.
Okay, very good, because I have a next nice.
Time.
Yes, I have still one example I want to show you, which is cool. I think so. Just let me skip to the right presentation here again. So desktop 2. So I hope you see again the poll. Good. This fail is, who has a Google Chromecast? I mean, we have all Netflix and stuff like that. Google Chromecast was the beginning of it. This is an attack which has been also brilliant. It's called the Rick Astley attack. And this was made for the Google Chromecast stick. The idea is that there was a vulnerability in Google Chromecast, and Google was informed about this vulnerability, let's say 2 years, and they hadn't fixed it. So people were building strange devices. And when they were building this kind of strange devices, they could access your Google Chromecast. For example, if I'm your neighbor, I can access your Google Chromecast by just hacking with this, let's say, Raspberry Pi build device, accessing to the RF connection of the Chromecast. And then I could get control over your Google Chromecast. And what this device was doing, it was forcing the Google Chromecast television then to play Rick Astley. And that's why it's called the Rick Astley attack. So if you are a Rick Astley lover, it's perfect. But if you're like me, don't like Rick Astley lover, maybe you're not so a fan of that people are getting remote attacked your device. By that, we are going to the last Slido. I just need to activate a poll. 1 second again. And let me start the last one. So the new poll should be activated. 1 second. And I will give you again the sharing that you can just get to the Slido. So please go to this, again, go to the Slido or just reload the Slido. There will be a new poll question. So I will just keep that 1, 2, 3 seconds more. And now I will go to the Slido and then you see the address as well. I think so. Let me do that. So let me go here to the Slido and my last question. So my last question is, what's the lesson you have learned from my presentation? Come on, scary. It's like, as I said, it's unfortunately scary. Oh, someone has learned 16198. That's also happy. Buy a new printer would be cool, but check if the port is really close, because also new printers have old protocols. Sort out the router. That's a good idea, I think. And how to check a data breach. I think that's also good lessons. And then you think maybe about your passwords as well. Like update your stuff and think about how to update a building. I mean, you can only update some devices 2 years and a building is getting 40 years old. That's what makes scary. Like, why is it, how do we manage these things in smart life cycles? So guys, I hope you enjoyed the presentation.